Every 911 dispatcher has a white whale. That one call. The one that lives in the back of the throat, behind the professional composure, behind the 12 years of training that teaches you to keep your voice steady while someone's world is ending on the other end of the line. For some of my colleagues, it's the call they couldn't solve. For others, it's the one that ended in a scream. A specific scream, a specific voice, a specific moment when the line went from active to silent and the silence meant something irreversible had happened. My name is Sarah. I've been taking calls for county dispatch for 12 years. I thought I had heard everything. The frantic, breathless gasps of a cardiac arrest at 2 a.m. The hushed, barely there whisper of a home invasion. The caller's voice so low they're practically mouthing the words, terrified that the person in their kitchen will hear them on the phone. The hysterical laughter of the genuinely broken. The kind of laughter that sounds like crying played backward and is somehow worse than either. I thought I had heard everything. 3 nights ago, at 3 a.m., the board lit up with a priority. One call. I hit the headset button, gave the standard greeting. 911, what is your emergency? Static at first, thick and wet. The way static sounds when it's coming through damaged equipment, like a radio being played at the bottom of a swimming pool. And then a voice came through, steady, calm, terrifyingly, precisely familiar. My voice, my exact inflection, the slight rasp in my throat that I've had since a bad winter cold 3 years ago that never fully cleared, the way I clip the end of my sentences when I'm tired. The voice said, Sarah, don't look at the logs. I'm standing in the break room and I just watched you die. I looked at the caller ID on my monitor. The call wasn't coming from a cell tower, not a landline, not an external number. The origin point was my own console. Station 4, the very chair I was sitting in. My first instinct was a prank. The dispatch center has a dark sense of humor. It's a coping mechanism, one I understand and participate in. And someone with a voice modulator or a deepfake audio setup could theoretically have produced what I was hearing. But the room was empty. The night shift runs skeleton crew, and the only other person in the building was Greg, down in the basement checking the backup generators. I looked at the waveform on my monitor. The vocal stress markers were live, not a recording, not a synthesis. A live voice speaking in real time with the micro tremors of genuine physiological stress running through every syllable. It was me, and I was terrified. Who is this? I whispered, my hand hovering over the trace button. It's you, Sarah, the voice replied, or it will be. In exactly 6 minutes, the power is going to flicker. When it comes back on, the doors to the dispatch center will be locked from the outside. Don't go to the break room. The thing wearing Greg's face is already waiting there. The silence of an empty dispatch center at 3 a.m. is a specific kind of silence, dense, pressurized, the silence of a space designed to channel emergencies that accumulates the residue of every cry it has ever conducted. I checked the logs. The call wasn't there. No record, no timestamp, no waveform saved. As if it had never happened. As if I had imagined a call at my own console from my own voice warning me about my own death. And then, at 3:20 a.m., exactly 6 minutes later, the lights hummed and died. 3 seconds of absolute dark when the emergency lights engaged, casting the consoles in their sickly red operational glow. I heard it. The heavy, metallic percussion of the magnetic locks engaging on the main doors. A sound I had heard before, only in drills. A sound that in every context I had ever heard it meant, nobody gets in, which also meant nobody gets out. I tried to radio Greg. No response. Just a rhythmic tapping on the channel, a finger on a microphone, deliberate, spaced, Morse code, H-E-L-P. I pulled up the CCTV feed for the break room. The image was grainy, oversaturated with compression noise, but I could see him. Greg, standing by the coffee machine, standing perfectly still. Back to the camera. Nothing about this was immediately wrong. Greg is a quiet man, a man who stands still, except for the shadow. His shadow was cast across the break room floor toward the camera. It was the shadow of a man. Except that it wasn't. The proportions were wrong at the extremities, the silhouette bristling with additional limbs, thin and jointed and multi-knuckled, spreading outward from the shadow's torso and reaching toward the ceiling vents with the patient, exploratory movement of something testing the dimensions of a space it intends to enter. The second call came through. "He heard you check the camera, Sarah. He knows you're watching now. He's moving into the vents. Look up." I tilted my head. The acoustic ceiling tiles of the dispatch center are standard foam panels. Ordinary, interchangeable. I have never once in 12 years looked at them with anything other than the mild notice you give to furniture. One of them, directly, geometrically above my head, was vibrating. And through its seams, a thin gray liquid had begun to drip. Landing on my keyboard. The plastic of the keys didn't just wet, it sizzled. The liquid was corrosive, eating through the console surface in slow, deliberate blooms. It smelled like scorched hair, like ozone after a lightning strike, like something biological burning that shouldn't burn. I stood. The headset cord snapped behind me as I backed away from the desk. The console was dissolving where the liquid touched it. The room, which had always felt like a neutral, functional space, had shifted into something else entirely. The air felt pressurized, aware. Like the inside of a living organism that had just identified me as a foreign body. I grabbed my phone. No signal. And on the screen, where the signal bars should have been, a countdown timer. Replacement initiated. 04 thou'd it. The breakroom. The only route to the stairs. Site 9 was built in a converted Cold War bunker, designed to function when the world above it had stopped functioning. No windows. No external access, just the elevator, the emergency stairs, and the dispatch center where 12 years of my professional life had accumulated in logbooks and coffee rings, and the specific ergonomic imprint of my body in a chair that had become mine by tenure. And Greg, or whatever was wearing Greg now, was between me and the stairs. I ran for the server room. Reinforced steel door, dedicated air supply. A room where the purpose of every object is computational and mechanical rather than human, and therefore possibly a room that whatever was in the vents had not yet learned to compromise. As I ran, the ductwork above me tracked my movement. Something heavy and slow, moving through the metal channels with a deliberate, patient drag that matched my pace, stopping when I stopped, resuming when I resumed, following the heat of me through the infrastructure of the building. Every light fixture I passed beneath exploded. Not flickered, not failed, exploded, showering sparks that fell in the red emergency light and made the hallway look like it was raining fire. I reached the server room door and threw the manual bolt at the precise moment. A pale, multi-jointed hand reached through the ceiling tile behind me, its fingers splayed, its proportions wrong in ways that my brain refused to fully process because processing them would mean accepting what they implied. The server room hum was enormous. The cooling fans generating a roar that in any other context would have been unbearable. In this one, it felt like white noise, like protection, like the sound of something that was still operating according to its original design. I looked at the security monitors inside the room. They showed the dispatch center I had just left. Station 4 was occupied. A woman was sitting at my console, my headset, my chair. She was typing on the keyboard I had abandoned, the one with the corrosive damage spreading across its surface, typing on it as if the damage wasn't there, as if she couldn't feel it. She looked up at the camera. Her teeth were silver needles, densely packed, arranged in rows. She smiled with all of them. My phone rang. The caller ID showed my own name. "I'm in the room with you, Sarah," the voice whispered. "I'm the one holding the phone." I looked at my hand. The phone was gone. In its place, a human jawbone, the teeth wired together with fine copper wire at the joints, the wiring precise and deliberate, the work of something that understood what a jaw was supposed to do and had rebuilt one from available materials. I dropped it. The scream that came out of me wasn't my voice. It was a 911 siren, amplified through my throat, filling the server room, and the server racks responded. The blue status lights converting one by one into small, wet, unblinking human eyes, dozens of them per rack, hundreds across the room, all oriented toward me. The walls began to dissolve, not structurally, not violently. They liquefied, the gray of the concrete becoming a black sludge that moved with the slow, definite purpose of a tide. The server room floor dropped away. The hum of the cooling fans stretched and deepened and became something else, became the ambient frequency of a much larger space, and when the sludge finished its work, I was no longer in a building. I was standing in a wasteland of telephone wire and rusted radio towers that extended in every direction to a horizon that didn't exist. The sky was black. Not night sky black, but the absolute black of a system that has been turned off. Thousands of headsets hung from the wires above me, swaying, each one whispering in a different voice, voices I recognized, every caller I had ever failed to save. Arranged overhead like a mobile made of consequence, other Sarahs were here. I could see them in the distance, standing at intervals, each holding a headset, each screaming into the void in silence, the sound produced and then consumed by the space before it could travel. We were the network. We were the fuel. The Greg thing emerged from the wires at the landscape center, 10 feet tall, assembled from distorted faces. Not Greg's face, not a single face, but hundreds of them, all of them faces I recognized from the calls, faces I had never seen but whose voices I knew, everyone I had ever heard die on the other end of a line. Their mouths moved in unison, a choir of every moment I had been unable to prevent. 911, they said in the accumulated voices of 12 years of emergencies. What is your emergency? And across the wasteland, on top of a pile of rusted servers, the other Sarah was standing, holding a signal flare. Alive. Intact. The version of me who had made the call. Sarah, she screamed. The connection isn't just audio. It's life force. Every call feeds it. You have to cut the line. I understood. The call from myself hadn't been a warning sent through the system. It was a bypass. A moment when a future version of me had found enough signal to reach backward through the infrastructure of the temporal sink and try to interrupt what was about to happen. The entity hadn't built the bunker. It had grown into the bunker, taking root in the years of accumulated trauma that a dispatch center generates, feeding on the frequency of human emergency, using our voices as a bridge between its dimension and ours. Every call we answered gave it another foothold in our world. I reached out and grabbed a coil of live telephone wire from the nearest tower. The electricity moved through me, and it wasn't pain, it was memory. Sequential, cataloged, vivid. My first day at the console. The first call I ever saved. A 6-year-old who had found her mother unconscious, who had listened to my voice and stayed calm and stayed on the line until the ambulance arrived, who I had never met, but whose voice I still heard sometimes when the night shift got quiet. The faces of the people I had pulled back from the edge through nothing but words and training and the discipline to stay present when everything in me wanted to look away. And then the faces of the ones I hadn't saved. The Greg thing lunged. Its limbs were tangled fiber optic cables, its mass the accumulated weight of every failed connection, every dropped call, every moment when the line had gone silent before help could arrive. I wrapped the wire around my body and I became the signal. I didn't die. I short-circuited the network. I flooded the temporal sink with everything I had. Every memory, every moment of saved and unsaved, every second of 12 years of sitting in a chair in a windowless room and choosing call after call to pick up. And the radio towers began to explode in sequence, each one failing as the overload moved through the system, and the black sky filled with the light of a network destroying itself from the inside. The sludge receded. The wasteland dissolved into white static. I felt a pressure differential, a narrow channel of coherent light, and then my console. The dispatch center. The lights were on. The air conditioning hummed its ordinary hum. My headset was on my head, the cord intact, the console undamaged. My hands were on the desk. Greg walked in with 2 cups of coffee and a normal human face. "You okay, Sarah? You look like you saw a ghost." I didn't answer. I looked at the board. The priority 1 light began to flash. Station 4, my station. My hand was shaking as I reached for the headset button. I pressed it. I gave the standard greeting. 911, what is your emergency? Static, thick and wet, like a radio played at the bottom of a pool. And then my own voice, frantic, stripped of all the composure that 12 years had built into it, talking fast, running out of time. Sarah. Sarah, listen to me. I'm in the server room. Don't pick up the jawbone. Don't go to the break room. He is standing behind you right now. I didn't turn around. I didn't look at the logs. I picked up my pen and I wrote. Log entry 3 a.m. The caller is me. The emergency is forever. I'm still on the line. I looked at Greg. He was still smiling. The coffee steam rose between us and the cold air of the dispatch center, and in the steam for 1 second, I saw a face that wasn't Greg's. I looked at his shadow on the wall. 12 fingers, reaching for the vent. The board was still flashing. The call was still open. I was still on the line. I always will be.